Good trouble on Good Friday. We got into good trouble on Good Friday. 25 people were arrested for a nonviolent direct action at the headquarters of Lockheed Martin, the world's largest weapons contractor, where the weapons being used in Gaza are made. Hundreds of others joined in the action during Holy Week as members of the Gaza Ceasefire Pilgrimage walked over 20 miles, roughly the length of Gaza, from the Liberty Bell to Lockheed Martin. And here's why we did it. The event was part of a global movement with similar walks happening in over 200 cities around the world, in every continent, including Antarctica. Our message is simple: end the genocide, let in the aid, release the hostages, and stop sending weapons and funds to Israel. Weapons like those made at Lockheed Martin. On October 7th, 1,200 precious lives were lost. Every one of them a sacred child of God made in the image of God. The world stood with Israel against the merciless slaughter and terror of October 7th. And we must not hesitate to stand against anti-Semitism and all hatred today. But in the days since October 7th, we have watched the state of Israel pour out its wrath on the people of Gaza, killing around 200 people a day, one child every 10 minutes, often using the Bible as a weapon to justify their revenge. My mama taught me two wrongs don't make a right. And the scripture says that we don't repay evil with evil, but we overcome evil with good. In the past 170 days since October 7th, over 32,000 people have been killed. 15,000 of those are children. Over 74,000 people have been injured. Thousands are missing under the rubble. We are watching a genocide, ethnic cleansing, live streamed on social media, and most of our leaders are silent, even complicit. As Palestinian pastor Reverend Munther Ezek said, Gaza has become the moral compass of the world. To speak out against the violence of October 7th does not make you anti-Palestinian. It makes you decent, human, moral, compassionate. And to speak out against the violence since October 7th is not to be anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas. It's to be decent, human, moral, and compassionate. One of the central convictions of Christianity is that there is a God who is near to the suffering, near to the poor, the widows and the orphans, those who are victims of violence. Jesus left all the comfort of heaven to be born as a brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish baby, born as a refugee during a genocide under King Herod, born homeless in a manger with no room in the inn, from a town called Nazareth, where people said nothing good could come. Jesus, arrested, terrorized, tortured, executed on that Roman cross. So on Good Friday, Christians remember in a special way that Christ is God's act of divine solidarity as he endured the most horrific violence on the cross and subverted it with love and forgiveness and an empty tomb. It is Christ who said, Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are the children of God. It's Christ who rebuked his own disciples when they wanted to call down fire from heaven on the people of Samaria. And it's Christ who scolded Peter when he resorted to violence, saying to Peter, Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Put the sword away. In the Easter story, Pontius Pilate washes his hands as Christ is being killed, attempting to wash the blood off his hands and pretend he is not responsible. So that was part of our message at Lockheed Martin on Good Friday. Our lead banner read, Lockheed Martin, you have blood on your hands. Ironically, Lockheed Martin covered up the large signs at their main entrance with large blue tarps and duct tape, making our point even stronger. They literally tried to hide any evidence of their corporate logo as we gathered to protest the genocide in Gaza. You can't make this stuff up. We made a banner with the numbers on it. over 32,000 killed, over 13,000 children killed, over 74,000 injured, and we all added our handprints in red paint. Even little Eli, my 12-week-old baby, added his handprint for the babies in Gaza. Many folks left the paint on their hands as a reminder that the genocide in Gaza is not just being done by Israel. It's being done with funds from the United States and weapons made in the United States by companies like Lockheed Martin. The U.S. gives Israel $4 billion a year, and Lockheed Martin makes billions more from weapons sales with contracts that did not begin on October 7th, but have decades-old history. Since the 1970s, Lockheed Martin has provided the F-16s and more recently, the F-35 fighter jets used in Gaza. In 5 years, Lockheed sent 102 F-16s and 50 F-35s. They've also sent over multiple launch rocket systems, M270s, the Hellfire missiles that have killed so many people are made at Lockheed Martin. In the recent assault in response to October 7th, the U.S. and Israel agreed on a new weapons package 2 months into the genocide to supply even more F-35s and F-15 jets, as well as Apache helicopters. So yes, Lockheed Martin has blood on its hands. They've made a killing off killing. They've turned war into a billion-dollar business. And as the old saying says, if you want to stop violence, figure out who is profiting from it. That's why we gathered at Lockheed Martin on Good Friday. Even in the days since our vigil, we've seen even more unimaginable violence in the destruction of the Al-Shifa hospital and the Israeli bombing of the Iranian embassy in Syria using weapons made by Lockheed Martin. As many fellow Christians bless the bombs falling on Gaza, weapons made at Lockheed Martin, we say, no, not in our name and not in the name of our Savior, Jesus. As many Christians try to defend the violence of Israel being done in planes made by Lockheed Martin, we are calling for a permanent ceasefire, an end to the violence in the name of Christ, the Prince of Peace. It was a diverse interfaith gathering with people of all faiths, as well as some folks who aren't religious at all, but are compelled by their conscience to stand against the violence in Gaza. We had dozens of children of all ages. I'm guessing my little baby Elijah was one of the youngest at 12 weeks old, but he sure wasn't alone. There were babies in strollers and kids playing tag. There was laughter in the air, even as we lamented the violence. There were teenagers sitting on the Lockheed Martin wall with their feet dangling next to a sign that read, "Let Gaza live." One of the kids held a homemade banner that read, "U.S. bombs kill children." Another woman had a cardboard sign that read, "Pastor for peace." Another sign read, "Who would Jesus bomb?" The young and young at heart put a rhythm to our call for ceasefire as they beat on large blue drums together. One of the shirts we made for the Good Friday Vigil has an iconic image of Jesus with his mother holding his face, next to a more recent image of a mother in Gaza holding the face of her child. On the back, the shirt has the words of Jesus in Matthew 25 when he says, "Whatever you have done to the least of these, you've done to me." It's a reminder that what we do to the children in Gaza, we do to Christ. As we force them to starve, we are starving Christ. As we refuse to allow in clean water, it is Christ who goes thirsty. As doctors are forced to amputate without anesthesia, using cell phones as flashlights, we are doing that unto Christ. Lord, have mercy on us. We held a sacred procession, reminiscent of the many liturgical stations of the cross services I've attended over the years, but this one was different. It was taking liturgy into the streets. Protest, when it's done right, can be a form of worship. So we carried our signs prayerfully. We carried our banners and slowly made our way to the main entrance of Lockheed Martin. We carried professionally printed posters with large photographic images of the devastation from the bombing, the shattered lives, each one branded with "Made in the USA." And we carried 6 black signs with the names of the children, a reminder that they are not just numbers, they have names. Every one of them, a precious child made in the image of God. We carried thousands of those names of the children killed in Gaza onto the property of Lockheed Martin, an act that was part religious ceremony, part street theater, part public lament. As we crossed over the blue line that designates where the public property ends and the private property of Lockheed Martin begins, we were given a warning that we were trespassing and could face arrest. The folks with the names of the children laid down on the ground, holding those names, a profoundly moving posture in the rich tradition of die-ins. Others of us began to sing. Several participants unrolled yellow crime scene, do not enter tape, and they roped off the entrance to Lockheed Martin, calling it what it is, the scene of a crime, a war crime. On the other side of the boundary, we laid several dozen red roses. One after another, kids and adults brought those flowers over the blue line and laid them on the names of the children. So powerful, so moving. It was a Good Friday liturgy of lament, a prophetic Easter message that death will not get the last word. You can't kill love. Love will rise again. As the police began arresting us, we sang hymns and freedom songs. Down by the riverside, gonna lay down my sword and shield. We sang, we shall overcome. We sang, ain't gonna let Lockheed Martin turn me around. And we said the Lord's Prayer, which had a new ring to it as we said that part about forgiving us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, as we were arrested for trespassing. Just before we began the procession onto Lockheed Martin, we had reminded the group of these words of Martin Luther King, whose assassination we remember the anniversary of in the month of April. He said this: "There is nothing wrong with a traffic law that says you have to stop for a red light. But when a fire is raging, the fire truck goes through that red light and normal traffic had better get out of its way. When a man is bleeding to death, the ambulance goes through those red lights at top speed." Well, there is a fire raging in Gaza, and we need brigades of ambulance drivers who will ignore the red lights of the present system until the emergency is solved. That's why we were willing to go to jail. Dr. King reflected on how he was initially troubled to go to jail for justice, but then he looked at history and saw what good company he had historically behind bars. Indeed, all the way back to Jesus, who was arrested on that first Good Friday. And Christians at their best have always been holy troublemakers, creators of divine mischief, folks that challenge the systems of death and oppression, the things that are crushing other people's lives. So it was an honor to go to jail on Good Friday. As John Lewis once said, when we get into good trouble, we can still smile in our mugshots because we know that we are on the right side of history. Without a doubt, our children and grandchildren will ask us what we did to try to stop the genocide in Gaza. I'm trying hard to be able to answer them honestly and say we did everything we could, including going to jail. In fact, I'll tell my little boy Eli, it was your first protest, and I know it will not be his last. On the citation we were given by the police, we've been charged with disorderly conduct, and underneath the charge, there's a section that says nature of offense. And the police officers wrote in that section, defendant created a physically offensive condition by an act which served no legitimate purpose. Well, we're here to say that there was something offensive happening that day on Good Friday, but it was not our prayerful protest. The thing that was offensive to God was making a profit off the mass destruction of human lives. What was offensive was not those of us who laid down with roses on our bodies at the main gate of Lockheed Martin, but it is the mangling of bodies that's happening inside Lockheed Martin and the design of weapons. That's the offensive act. That's what's offensive to God. There was a crime happening at 230 Mall Boulevard, but it was not prayerfully putting our bodies in the way of the flow of weapons of mass destruction. As we taped off the main entrance to Lockheed Martin, we made it plain. The real crime is happening inside the headquarters of the world's largest weapons contractor, Lockheed Martin. We will not build a better world by killing other people's children. It's time to get in the way of the business of war. I am proud of the good trouble we got into on Good Friday as we went to jail with Jesus. Too many lives have been lost. It's time for us to turn up the volume for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, an end to the violence. And for many of us, we do this holy work in the name of our executed and risen Savior, that brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish refugee from Nazareth, Jesus, the Christ, the Prince of Peace.